Hey folks, welcome to week 2. We're going to start digging ourselves into some real nitty-gritty philosophy. So we're going to start way back in ancient Greece with the father of philosophy, that's Socrates, and his faithful student Plato. These two sort of come as a unit because Socrates actually never wrote anything down. Plato did all of his recording for him and so wrote what are now called Socratic dialogues. So Socrates is known as the father of philosophy. He's the one who really got the discipline off the ground. He was also known at the time as a gadfly because the way he did philosophy was actually very annoying, the same as a sort of biting insect. He wandered around the marketplace in Athens, in ancient Greece, and just accosted people. He walked to people and said, hey, tell me about virtue, tell me about piety, tell me about justice, and wanted to see if he could get people to have these really tough philosophical discussions with him as they were just trying to go about their day. This was pretty annoying to the folks in Athens, but some people would still take the bait. So Socrates did philosophy on what's called a dialogue model. And so all of his philosophy and all of the philosophy we have from him is not written so much in book form, but as just transcripts of discussions, and they sort of read like plays. Socrates had a couple of goals in doing his philosophy. First, he wanted to find definitions for tough concepts. So he really wants to know about things like justice, virtue, piety, things like that. His other goal, and the more annoying one probably, was to show people how dumb they are. There are a lot of folks in Athens who thought that they were really, really smart, who thought they were hot stuff, and actually really didn't know much at all. You can think, politicians today are sort of the same model, and Socrates hated this. So part of his goal of asking these important people questions as they're going about their day is to show that really they don't know nothing. Plato was one of Socrates' most famous students, and he sort of followed him around. He was one of Socrates' disciples. And Plato wrote down all of Socrates' dialogues, or at least many of them, but then also goes on later to do his own thing, and we'll read some of Plato's own work later on. So that's just a little bit of background on these two guys. Let's launch into it. So one of the first dialogues we've read was the Meno, and so this is an aptly named dialogue between Socrates and, hey, Meno. There are two big questions here. We're looking for first the question of, can virtue be taught? So can we teach people, Athenians, to be more virtuous? And second of all, what is virtue in the first place? This seems like an important question to answer if we want to know whether it can be taught. We're going to use Socrates' famous method. You've heard of the Socratic method. It's a way of teaching now. You get answers by asking questions to people, and you get them. You actually teach them something by doing this. And so this is sort of Socrates' sneaky goal. He's talking to Meno in this dialogue, and Meno is a real smartass. He's a young guy. He's an aristocrat, so he's filthy rich, and he's been educated by these guys called sophists. And you remember Sophia in ancient Greek means wisdom. Well, sophists comes from this too. But you probably heard the word sophistry, right? And sophistry is not a good thing. Sophistry is sort of pretending to know something when you actually don't know much of anything at all. And it comes from these sophists. These were paid tutors, and when I say paid, I mean paid a lot. Really expensive paid tutors hired by Greek nobles to educate their children. And these were not great guys, or at least not in Socrates' opinion, because they thought they knew a lot. And in fact, right, Socrates' goal, if you remember, is to show that people don't know as much as they think they do. As Socrates sort of works through what he's looking for, what he's looking to find out answers to, it ends up that these sophists, they'll tell you they can teach you all sorts of things about virtue and piety, but really they don't know a thing. They don't know anything more than anybody else, but they're happy to take all your money to pretend that they do. Socrates really doesn't like this, and so he's going to try to show Meno that, look, man, you shouldn't be listening to these sophists. They don't know anything. So here's the premise. We're going to start off with Meno asking Socrates, right? This is the very first line of the dialogue, can virtue be taught? He thinks Socrates is a really smart guy because he thinks, in a way, Socrates is just like a sophist. Socrates is going to play dumb. This is a really famous Socratic tendency in his dialogues. He's going to say, I don't know, I'm not so smart, right? Socrates' most famous line is, I don't know anything. This is his favorite way to say it. He wants Meno to tell him all the answers. So he's going to say, well, I don't know anything at all, but Meno, you've learned from the sophist Gorgias, and this is a really famous sophist, a really expensive sophist too. So Meno, you can tell me about virtue, and we can just have a good, helpful discussion about it. Socrates is going to play dumb and sort of lure Meno into his trap. So since Meno learned from these sophists, he ought to know plenty, and so Socrates is going to start asking the questions. This is not going to go so well for Meno, as we know, and we will see how that goes in our next video.